discovery that Israel had cloned a dozen British passports for a secret assassination operation. Being secret, the Israelis, of course, are still doing their usual "what me gov" act on the murder of the leader of Hamas. But the Serious Organised Crime Agency here has established compelling evidence that it was Israel which cloned the British passports used by a dozen of the squad involved. Britain has expelled a diplomat, the equivalent of Israel being sent to sit on the naughty step. First tonight, Mark Urban reports.
The use of fake British passports by an alleged Israeli hit team continues to produce aftershocks.
The government judges it is highly likely that the forgeries were made by a state intelligence service. Taking this, together with other inquiries and the link to Israel established by SOCA, we have concluded that there are compelling reasons to believe that Israel was responsible for the misuse of the British passports.
Neither the British government nor Dubai have formally accused Israel of murdering Hamas official Mahmoud al-Mabhouh. But the connection established between the 12 team members, who Dubai police say were carrying British passports, has produced its own leads and uncomfortable discoveries for the British government.
The calculation is we do what works. British passports, Australian, French, German, are probably good passports to be used in order to carry out an operation that will eliminate a serious threat to Israel. And you think about the threat to Israel first and the implication for the Allies second.
And why not American passports?
I think American passports, I imagine, would be a no-go area, but also, again, guessing here, from a tactical level, American passports are probably more complex to use through the Middle East.
So the Dubai incident has led to the expulsion of an unnamed Israeli. But he's not the first declared persona non grata by London. And today the shadow Foreign Secretary reminded the Commons of that previous form.
There was a similar case in 1987 when it was discovered that Israel had forged British passports for intelligence operations. On that occasion, the then Israeli Foreign Minister Shimon Peres assured the then Foreign Secretary, my right honourable and noble friend Lord Howe of Aberavon, that this would not happen again. And it seems that those assurances have not been upheld.
Apparently, this diplomat was not picked purely for symbolic reasons. It wasn't just because he was a Mossad officer serving in London. Government insiders say that he was personally involved in obtaining the passports used by the Dubai team. Now, if that's true, it suggests another extraordinary lapse of tradecraft by Mossad or overconfidence in using an accredited officer in a friendly country for such purposes.
So was the embassy, through a Mossad officer, directly involved? Israel's friends are sceptical.
Well, Mr. Miliband didn't say that in his statement, and I, from my experience of working in different embassies across London, cannot possibly believe, in my experience, that there was someone working in the Israeli embassy in Britain working on this project. I simply don't believe it.
As for the Israeli embassy itself, tasked with maintaining good relations and clearing up the mess after spies, they simply hope the incident will blow over as quickly as possible.
We are disappointed by the British government's decision, and you know that in a couple of minutes we're going to celebrate the renovation of the Israeli embassy here in the United Kingdom, and it is our clear intention to strengthen the firm foundation of our relationship, which is both vital and beneficiary to both our countries. I want to thank you very much. Goodbye.
But today's diplomatic action over the Dubai affair by Britain is unlikely to be the last. Israel's government is refraining from direct comment on Mossad's possible involvement, but its right-wing coalition is increasingly internationally embattled. There are arguments about new homes in the occupied territories and tensions over Iran's nuclear program. Many Israelis, particularly nationalists, are in an uncompromising mood.
Forging passport is perfectly illegitimate, but it's part of a war. And to judge Israel for doing that ignoring that we are trying to prevent the death of many innocent civilians by fighting terrorism, that's not right. Who made Britain to be the judge on that?
Another shot across the bows from London today. The Foreign Office website warning citizens about the dangers of letting their passports be copied. In isolation, this saga could soon blow over. But at a time of strained Israeli relations with Europe and the US, it could become one more step in the direction of a diplomatic deep freeze.
Well, we're joined now by the former Liberal Democrat leader Samin Campbell, and we're joined from Tel Aviv by Meir Elran, who used to be the Deputy Director of Israeli Military Intelligence. He's now at Tel Aviv University's Institute for National Security Studies. Mr. Elran, is this sanction of expelling a diplomat likely to affect how Mossad behaves in future?
Good evening to you. I think that any measure taken against Israel, like the one that has been taken today, will have to be studied very, very carefully in Israel, because we understand that the relations between Israel and our allies, and particularly between Israel and the UK, is a very serious matter, and we are very concerned to keep them in the best of shapes. So I'm sure that everybody, both in the foreign ministry...
I understand that, but apparently not concerned enough to honour the pledge given in 1987 that you wouldn't do this sort of thing.
Well, I still am in a position to think and suggest to you that we really here in Israel, most of us, and I'm sure that the government thinks very seriously about the relations between the two countries, and whatever happened, if it happened, and I assume that there was some kind of a mishap, has to be studied very carefully, as I suggested, and so that it will not be repeated in the future.
Min Campbell, would it have mattered had it not gone technically wrong? In other words, if no one had known that these Mossad agents had been using British and other fake passports, would it have mattered?
Well, it wouldn't have been so controversial here in the United Kingdom. If the relationship between Israel and the United Kingdom is so important to Israel, then you have to ask yourself, why was this allowed to happen? And of course, it wasn't just one passport, it was systematic. There were 12. And the importance of this, I think, is reflected in the fact that the Foreign Secretary felt compelled to come to the House today and to announce just how badly the government was taking it, talking about insult upon injury, and then to say, we're going to expel a diplomat. Now, for allies to do that, that represents, I think, an indication of just how seriously Britain's taking this.
But you're not really saying, and we know how difficult it is for people to move around the Middle East on Israeli passports, you're not really saying, are you, that you would rather the military head of Hamas was still alive than that British passports and other passports had been used by those who killed him?
I don't think it's a question of either or in the way in which you put it. I would rather British passports were not abused. I would rather British passport holders were not put at risk. And I would rather that there weren't targeted assassinations. If we're going to persuade people in the Middle East of the importance of the rule of law, then we have to ensure that the rule of law is observed and that those with whom we are allied observe the rule of law as well.
Meir Elran, you see, the argument is that this does nothing to win Israel any friends.
Well, first of all, I want to suggest to you that one should differentiate between the technicalities of the matter, even if they are very important and sometimes they make the difference, to the general picture. And I would suggest to look at this in a wider kind of a scope, because we have to realize that we are here actually in the midst of a very long and very agonizing kind of a struggle against terrorism. And sometimes you have to handle those situations in manners that are conflicting perhaps to some of the other interests and needs of a country that is not necessarily in the same position than Israel. So I would suggest that, of course, we have to take into consideration.
That's the justification, is it, for saying one thing, as you said in 1987, and doing completely the opposite?
I wouldn't say it's a justification. I think it's an attempt on my part to explain to you what might be the perception here. The perception in Israel is that we are bound to do whatever is possible to counter terrorism.